Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to today's video. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, because this will help me out in growing the channel and being able to produce more videos like this one. This episode will guide you through the issues of Uncanny X-Men published in 1982. Issue 158. This issue starts off in the Bermuda Triangle, more specifically Magneto's former base, currently the home of the X-Men after the Xavier mansion got destroyed. We see Carol Danvers, the former Avenger Miss Marvel, in a hand-to-hand combat exercise with 3 Star Jammers, Mamselle Hepzibah, Raza and Chode. Chode is accompanied by his pet Curie. The exercise is being monitored by Peter Corbeau, an associate of the X-Men. The battle surprisingly goes back and forth, considering Carol is pretty much a baseline human being now after having lost her powers. Eventually the 3 Star Jammers win the battle. We then see Colossus and his sister Illyana are watching TV in another part of the base. Kitty is there too, but she's lost in thoughts. She thinks about Colossus and how he seems to be recovering well. She also thinks about how short she's been with the X-Men, but already has experienced so much. Fights with aliens, demons and supervillains, how she's seen people die and almost died herself. She thinks how she should probably go back to living a normal life, but also how none of them are really normal. She also wonders if they do not only have special powers, but also special feelings. She recalls how she felt when she thought Colossus died, and how she felt when she found out when he apparently hadn't died. Feelings she has not felt before as a 14-year-old kid. Feelings that won't go away. She feels she has to talk to someone, but who? Xavier is sick and she feels like she can't confide in any of the guys, which only leaves Storm. We then switch back to the section of the island where Carol was being studied by Peter Corbeau, with the help of the Star Jammers. We find out that after Carol lost her powers, her body is apparently still changed, transformed, beyond that of a normal human body. Moira McTaggart, a close friend of Charles Xavier and a scientist and geneticist, is also there. We find out that Charles is doing alright physically. Nightcrawler teleports in to tell Moira to come to the improvised sickbay to meet up with Lilandra. There we also find Charles, comatose, Storm, Wolverine, Lilandra and Oracle of the Imperial Guard. Oracle, being a telepath, might just be the only one that can possibly help. In full concentration, she enters Charles's mind. What she finds herself in is a psychic riptide of chaos, and she experiences a conflict in which she feels like she died and undergoes 1,000 gruesome deaths. She becomes more and more in sync with Xavier and screams a shriek of pain and terror. She finds hunger, something alien, an insatiable predator, a foul and evil presence, and when she sees it, she denies and forgets it. Xavier in his mind notices this and sobs in frustration and despair, while something in his very soul starts grinning. Oracle then gets mentally taken over by Professor X, and their combined psi energy powers are trying to destroy everything in their surroundings. Moira notices this and concludes Xavier is trying to commit suicide due to his utter hopelessness, by destroying the sickbay and everyone in it. She tells Wolverine to use his claws to sever the energy link between Charles and Oracle. Storm uses her power to hurl Wolverine between Charles and Oracle, so he can use his unbreakable adamantium claws to sever the energy link. Nightcrawler and Storm extinguish the fire in the sickbay. Lilandra sits herself next to Charles on his bed and thinks on how she's less of a person without him around. Moira looks after Oracle, but she tells her that she's fine, but Xavier is not, and how he's retreated deep within his own mind, fighting a battle against himself apparently. While the X-Men inside the sickbay keep extinguishing the fires, Kitty faces through the walls, asking what had happened. Kurt tells her what happened and also tells her to be careful with randomly popping in, because the fires are still burning and many of the electrical systems are still working, which might get destroyed by her phasing powers. Kitty tells everyone about an item on the TV about the X-Men. It's a talk show, and there are scenes shown of the X-Men's battles with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and with Deathbird from days before. They are portrayed as one of the most mysterious superhero groups, as opposed to the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, who are more well known. The guest of today on the talk show is United States Senator Robert Kelly, who immediately takes issue with the X-Men being called heroes. He classifies them as outlaws. Kurt can't believe this and talks about how they could not have acted differently since they were being attacked, and asks himself if they should have let themselves and innocent bystanders get killed in the attacks. Wolverine says it's useless because this guy won't change his mind. His mind is made up. The talk show host reminds Senator Kelly how the X-Men fought recognized criminals and how they saved Kelly's life in an assassination attempt carried out by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Kelly says that doesn't matter. It's more about the principle of taking the law in their own hands, and that there are more and more so-called superheroes popping up every day. In the United States, but also globally. And that if national security is at stake, these mutants need to be investigated, examined, and if they're a threat, they must get dealt with. Of course, this comes to a shock to the X-Men, and Kitty wonders why this man hates them so. Wolverine responds by saying, "The nature of the beast, kiddo, to fear which is different." Moira, being a longtime friend and confidant of Charles, tells the rest of the X-Men that he worked together with the government when he formed the original X-Men team, and how the government has files on each and every one of them, and probably the current team as well. She says that they've been safe and lucky so far, but this political and social shift might change all that, and that these files will have to be destroyed. Kitty, being a WizKid, suggests to create a virus program to search and erase all references about the X-Men, and have that infect the central data bank. Storm asks if she can do that, and Kitty responds that the Starjammers can. We then see the Starjammer spaceship land on the ground in Rio Diablo, next to the house of former X-Men Havoc and Polaris, preparing dinner. Alex opens the door and finds Scott, his brother, was knocking on it. Alex invites Scott in, and Scott tells him he's not alone, and that he has a bomb to drop, namely that he brought his long-lost father along, Christopher Summers, also known as Corsair, the leader of the Starjammers. Alex, being shocked at first, invites them in, and they have a long conversation with the four of them. In the meantime, a car pulls up outside of the Pentagon. Wolverine and Carol step outside of the car and wear their military uniforms. One of the Canadian Armed Forces, the other of the United States Air Force. They are accompanied by Storm, who comes along with Carol and Wolverine, and by Nightcrawler as the chauffeur. When they enter, military personnel tells Wolverine how they're getting exceptionally strong readings from the metal detectors, which makes sense since his full skeleton has adamantium lacing. Storm in her mind gets worried and hopes for Wolverine to have a grip on his short temper. Carol tells the lieutenant that they don't have time for this, and Wolverine whips out his medic card, which shows that he has prosthetic metal implants all over, due to war wounds. They proceed, and Wolverine and Carol have a little talk about their ranks and whether they are real and earned. They make their way to the Special Intelligence Service Operation Vault, the most highly guarded area of the entire Pentagon. Carol's high rank would be useful in getting there. While Carol gives a short history on the Pentagon, and Wolverine and her joke around a little bit, Carol bumps into an old familiar person. Not entirely one she expected, and not even a friendly one at that. It appears to be Rogue, the one person who attacked her months before when Carol was still Miss Marvel, and used her memory-absorbing powers to temporarily steal Carol's powers. Carol fought hard against it, the struggle took too long and something went wrong. The transfer became permanent and caused a lot of damage, in both women. Rogue punches Carol and knocks her on the floor. Wolverine attacks Rogue, recognizing her as one of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and during their fight, Rogue absorbs Wolverine's powers, rendering Wolverine unconscious. Storm immediately fires a warning shot at Rogue and tells her to leave. Rogue tells her that she was actually looking forward to meeting the X-Men and tearing them apart. Carol grabs the soldier's gun and fires at Rogue, but to no avail. The bullets bounce off of Rogue like they would on herself when she still had those same powers. Storm uses her elemental powers to push Rogue away to a place where they have more room for a fight and generates a fog in the corridor, while finding eye contact with Carol. She knows she hates Rogue, and with good reason, but they have a job to do. When the fog clears, Rogue, Wolverine and Storm are gone, and Carol continues on her way to the data center. While she's lost in thought about how Rogue stole everything from her, she's being spied on by another figure, who picks up a handgun from the floor and follows her. It is apparently Raven Darkholme, also known as Mystique, the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, in her civilian form. Storm, while carrying a still unconscious Wolverine, wonders if Rogue was alone, or if they stumbled on an assault operation by the Brotherhood by accident. She thinks to herself how Rogue seemed way too casual and relaxed and wonders if the government and the Brotherhood might be working together. At that moment, Rogue smashes through a wall, bashing Storm, who drops Wolverine. Rogue boasts how Wolverine's enhanced senses are a nice skill to have. Storm then uses her communicator to ask Nightcrawler for help, who teleports to the location and tries to deal with Rogue. A fight between the three X-Men and Rogue continues. In the meantime, Carol has gotten access to the data center, and Mystique, who is still on her trail, shapeshifts into Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. During the fight between Rogue and the X-Men, Rogue gets hold of Storm and absorbs her powers. Now these powers are way too much for Rogue to immediately get a grip on. It took Storm a long time to get them fully under control. Nightcrawler tries to rescue his teammates, but Rogue is creating a flash flood. In the data center, Mystique, posing as Nick Fury, holds Carol at gunpoint and shoots her right after she startled Carol. The X-Men team up on Rogue and are almost able to capture her, but she breaks free regardless. Mystique approaches Carol, who's apparently playing possum, and kicks Mystique, who she still thinks is Nick Fury, while saying looks can be deceiving, which is ironic of course. Carol was able to dodge the bullet and it only grazed her, as she wonders why Nick wouldn't shoot her. When Carol punches him, he shapeshifts into Storm, which of course catches Carol off guard, but she's still able to overpower her and render her unconscious, at which moment Mystique reverts back to her natural form. She figures out it was Mystique, the person that sent Rogue after her to steal her powers to begin with, and she now plans on killing Mystique. The X-Men seem to not be able to beat Rogue, so Storm creates a whirlwind and hurls Rogue miles away. And she suggests the X-Men to leave the Pentagon and abort the mission, since it's now crowded with security forces and they're beat from their fight with Rogue. What they don't know is that Carol has handed over Mystique to the military police. Mystique issues a threat and Carol tells the police to take her away and that she'll secure the vault. Carol thinks about how she probably should have killed Mystique, because with her shapeshifting power she is most likely bound to escape and come after Carol in the future. She can't recall why Mystique hates her so much, since that part of her memories are gone, due to Rogue's attack. She comes across her own data file while she's unleashing the computer virus in the databanks, and can't even recall any of the history written about her in those files. The faces are familiar, but those women are strangers to her. She erases the files on her and figures it's time to stop clinging to the person she was or could have been, and needs to accept her fate in the here and now. While she's walking outside, she wonders how the government will explain this attack on the Pentagon, and how the X-Men will probably get the blame for everything, especially with Senator Kelly firing up the flames of anti-mutant paranoia. And since the X-Men are not a sanctioned superhero group, unlike the Avengers, they will not be able to tell their side of the story to clear things up. She gets picked up by Kurt and enters the car and meets back up with Storm and Wolverine. They exchange the success and failures of the mission and consider the fact that Carol was able to erase all the data files concerning the X-Men as a great success. Carol agrees and is excited to start the rest of her new life. Thanks for watching this video.